If this video goes up late, it's because I had recorded all of this, I had edited all of this, and while it was processing, something went wrong and corrupted everything. Hello, welcome or welcome back. My name is Ari, and KB in the comments last month asked that I do a video celebrating my favorite AAPI authors, so that's this video. We're talking about Asian authors for Asian American and Pacific Islander month. Not all of these authors are Asian American. I'm just gonna put that out like straight up. But let's get into this. Before I talk about the authors, I want to make sure that you guys are following Asian booktubers as well, because while I can have favorite Asian authors, I'm not Asian. I'm not going to have the diverse experiences that Asian people experience in America. I won't experience their joys or the awful xenophobic shit that happens to them. Two of my favorite creators, but this is not even a close to end all be all, are Jinji and Cindy. I will link their channels down below, but please make sure that you're not just following white people for diverse recommendations. Also, I can tell you that while I read diversely, I don't love diversely apparently, and most of the authors I'm going to recommend in this video are Japanese. If the angle on this camera just moves significantly, my dog is out here running around and he just barreled into this tripod and knocked it over. So, yeah. Alright, our first author that I am going to recommend is one of my all-time favorite authors, just period. Insta-buy author for me, and that is Kazuo Ishiguro. Now, most of these authors I'm going to recommend one book, but for him I'm going to recommend two. First, his most popular is Never Let Me Go. Now, this is like historical fiction, but it also has like a light sci-fi taste to it. So if you're like, I don't really like historical fiction, read it for the sci-fi. If you're like, I don't really like sci-fi, read it for the historical fiction. Hey, stop licking the tripod. Sorry. His other book that I'm gonna recommend is, this one is just straight up historical fiction, and it sounds so boring, but the fact that this man can take such a boring concept and transform it into something amazing and lovely and readable, highly recommend. And that is The Remains of the Day. This is really just about a World War II butler who's reflecting on his life. That's it. Why is that interesting? I don't know, but somehow this man made it interesting. Next up, I have Itaf Rum, and she is a Palestinian American author. Now, I've only read one book from her, but it was beautiful and memorable, and I'm still raving about it like 2 years later, and that is A Woman Is No Man. This is a really powerful narrative about being an American immigrant from a country where women receive like little to no respect, and they're very sheltered, very abused, and have little to no rights. So yeah, being an American. One of the main themes in this book that I really loved was the idea of, if you are in an abusive relationship, just leave your abuser. There are so many reasons why some women just can't, and this explores one of them. So highly recommend, but there are, you know, content warnings. Next up is one of my weird books, and this one's definitely not for everyone, and I'm gonna highlight Amal et Matar, who was one of the two authors for This Is How You Lose the Time War. She is a Lebanese Canadian author. I believe she's a poet normally, and How You Lose the Time War is her only like prose, but it's weird. It's really about two competing like assassins slash spies who travel through time and change little things in time in order for their corporation or company to win in the future. And so they're constantly trying to counteract each other because time is fluid and they can, but they like leave notes for each other and then kind of fall in love through those notes. So it's a really sweet story, but it's really weird and it's really hard to follow. So you'll have to have my taste in like weird books to like this one. Next up, I want to highlight Yumi Sakura, who is a Japanese author. Again, a lot of these authors are going to be Japanese. She is also a manga artist, and she wrote and illustrated A Man and His Cat, which is the most gushy, adorable, sweet manga ever. If you liked Heartstopper because it was like so cinnamon rolly, you'll like A Man and His Cat. This is about an older man who adopts a cat from a pet store who everybody has passed by because the cat's fat and ugly, and it's from the perspective of the cat and like just the love and loyalty this cat has for this man, because this man thinks the cat's beautiful when the cat has like absolutely no self-esteem at all. Now, the ugly cat part comes from the cat. The cat's cute. The cat's not ugly, but this one, just pure joy and cinnamon roll and gushy. I need something happy in my life today, but I want to cry happy tears. That's what this manga is going to do for you. Next up, I want to talk about Rika Aoki, who is a Japanese American author, and she wrote A Light from Uncommon Stars. Now, this I read, I think in November, maybe December. Yeah, I read it in December, and it's weird, but it's so good, and it speaks so powerfully to the trans experience that I instantly fell in love. So this is a sci-fi where this like violinist makes a deal with the devil, and she has to present like 6 souls of other violinist, like her, of like students, in order to get out of her contract, right? And so she is on her 6th soul, and she comes across a transgender teen who is a violin prodigy, but also like really sad because she fucking lives in America. And you know, the US is a really awful place for transgender teens. And so you've got this like conflicting experience of like this woman who is like the only person in this transgender teen's life to treat her like a fucking human being, but she's also like gonna sell her soul to the devil. There's also like aliens who run a donut shop in here, just to throw in a little bit of extra spice. It sounds weird, but once you read it, it's not really as weird as it sounds. Next up, unsurprisingly, another Japanese writer, and that is Tashikozu Kawaguchi. He wrote translated fiction called Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Now, I personally liked the second book in the series, which is, or the companion novels, I guess, which is Tales from the Cafe, better, but you need to start with Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This is 4 short stories from a cafe in Japan where there's a certain table that you can sit down in and travel, and time travel, sorry, which sounds like really cool, but it's very, very restrictive. Like, you can only time travel to the cafe. So if you're going back in time and the person's not in the cafe, it's not very useful to you because you can't get up and you have to come back before the coffee gets cold. And there's a bunch of other rules and stuff like that. But like the stories are like almost bittersweet, but like really, really awesome, because it's like, what is so powerful that somebody wants to time travel for just a tiny, tiny amount of time to a cafe in Japan that's not even that popular? Like, there's very, very specific reasons that people want to do this time travel, and so it's really cool, and I liked it, and I recommend it. Next up, another Japanese author and another translated work, and this is Yoko Agawa and her book The Memory Police. Now, this one also weird, but it's like one of those books that it's like, I don't know what's going on, but I am so invested in all of the shit that I don't know. The Memory Police is basically about an island off the coast of Japan, and people are losing their memory, but in the weirdest way possible. It's, you wake up one day and you see a bird, and you know it's a bird, except for you don't know the word bird. And so you know that that thing exists. You know it flies if you haven't forgotten the word fly, but you can't say anything about it. What is this? I don't know, but I know it's existed throughout my entire life, even if I couldn't tell you anything about it. And then that's how it goes. Like, one day you're gonna forget the word bird and everything associated with birds, other than like recognizing that thing as something that should exist. The next day you're gonna forget arm, and your arm doesn't work anymore. It's attached to your body and it's still there, but you can't do anything with it because you've forgotten what arm is. And it's not one person that this is happening to. This is everybody on this little island. And just the concept is very weird, and like the book's really weird. Also, this is one of those books where, based on the perspective character, you're not going to get an answer to. So if you don't like open-ended endings, you're not going to get a lot of answers in this, or not all of the answers that you want. So beware with that. I love open-ended books, but a lot of people do not. And my final recommended author is for those for the manga fans out there. That is Jinji Ito. He is a Japanese author who writes horror manga. So if you like the spook, I recommend his books. What I don't recommend are the ones that he's taken somebody else's stories and like animated. I've read one of those and I hated it so much. It was just awful. But the ones that are uniquely his stories, Censor is the one that I really liked. If you want a specific recommendation, I haven't read all of them, but I really liked Censor. I'm still trying to get a hold of Yumikaze, because apparently the Spirals is the best one. Captain said he wanted to make an appearance, so here he is. Thank you for the kisses. Oh my goodness. Are you a good boy? No. Not at all. He likes being held like a baby. I don't know why, but this is his favorite thing to do, is have me pick him up and hold him like a baby, and he will fall asleep like this. Next up, I want to do 2 honorable mentions. First up is Miyoung, where I've read a lot of her books and haven't really loved any of them, but she's a very popular Chinese American author. But I did just yesterday finish Siren Queen by her, which released today, and I loved it. That was fantastic. For Miyoung, you're basically going to get what you get from the synopsis. So if the synopsis of her books, she writes a lot of novellas, sounds good to you, you're probably going to like it. If it doesn't sound good, you're probably not going to like it. Another honorable mention is Sakuya Nagamatsu, who wrote How High We Go in the Dark. He's a Japanese American writer. This one, I loved his writing, but I didn't like how the story was organized, where it reads like a bunch of short stories that are connected in some sort of way instead of like an overall novel narrative. But the story itself was really cool. It was kind of a sci-fi dystopian type, and you know I love dystopians, about a like memory erasing thing. So there you go. That is all the Asian authors that I personally have loved. Please, in the comments below, recommend Asian authors that you've loved and that you recommend that I need to check out. Anyway, that's going to be everything in today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!